the big picture is what protects you. The big picture, and you should be everyone, whether you're just beginning or whether experienced, you need to look and see what's happening with the overall game. So for example, let's talk about regeneration. Like, we use that term, it's overused now. Like when I first did it 10 years ago, everyone thought I was crazy. But now the term sort of doesn't mean anything. So if you're a new injector, you need to understand, what does that mean? And therefore what you need to look for. So for example, the word regeneration means that you're rebuilding tissues so that they are physically the same and they function like it did when it was great. So that it has to do both those things. It's called structure and function. So for new injectors, you think, okay, then what is it that I would look for to be able to say that I had rebuilt normal structure and function, and that whole thing is now what we call balanced ecosystem, which is something that has the up-regulation and down-regulation that happens with youth. So you need to look and see, and these are simple ways to do it. Did we make collagen? Yeah, but we have less collagen as we get older. Yep, so collagen, that's a good thing to look for. Did our treatments make more collagen? But that in itself means almost nothing. You have to ask all the other questions, like, did it make elastin as well? Did it make proteoglycans, which is like the jelly, the GAG substances around tissues? So you need to look to see, did you encourage the whole thing to rebuild, or did you just make more of one thing? So that's one way where you're doing most stupid treatments. People are coming to you with evidence. You're putting it in front of you, and you're looking at it and going, okay, and like, what looks good to me? I have no idea what it means. You just need to look for the kind of things that are reproduced to create a normal balanced ecosystem. So that's one thing.
Let's talk about that a little further, because I think there's not an understanding of this. And now having exposed to your thoughts and the research, so let's talk about our friend, the fibroblast.
Yeah.
Okay. Give us your quick analogy about the hands, what they have to do, and a happy fibroblast, an unhappy fibroblast, and what a happy fibroblast produces versus one that you poke with a stick.
Actually, just before we do, okay, that you asked me about big overview there's for beginning injectors. Like, if I could just back up a little bit.
Right.
And we're like, if your job is to do aesthetics, right? 18 years ago when I started, my job was aesthetics. That meant that I did tissue repositioning. When I'm talking about injectables, tissue repositioning. So that means I changed shapes, whether I put things right upside the tissue or whether I did it a long way away, like down at the bone. My job was to change shapes and blend and transition, right?
Sure, fill folds and hollows.
Yeah, and so to be good at that job, I had to understand fractional proportions, I had to study anatomy, I had to do art, and I had to say, okay, for this person, it's this shape, and that person is that shape, and but this is skill, sure, okay? So I tried to use characters as I can, and that is a skill which still exists now, so you have to be really good at that. Right? I think people are less good than they used to be at that. No, but there's another player, right? So you have to be good at this, but you also have to be good at the skills of trying to build better tissue.
So only separate skill in it.
It's like two pillars. Aesthetics now has two pillars, whether you want to deny it or not, whether you want to, people are not really seeing the wood from the trees, so they're genuinely and correctly complaining about a particular product and lack of evidence, right? Or particular regenerative product. Good, fine. Let's talk about that. Yeah. But the game overall remains the same. Aesthetics, two pillars. Tissue repositioning and tissue remodeling, making better tissue. We do that all the time. Like, if someone comes to you and they're an older lady, right? You come in, they look at their lips, There's no way you could do a proper art in those lips because the tissue was too poor. Right? A study that we did, when you do really simple injection underneath the skin, lots of tiny, underneath the lip, tiny little injections, leave it for 6 months, what happens? At the end of 6 months, you have thicker tissue. Now you can do art, right? So we've been already building better tissue as part of our practice, even if we were just using hyaluronic acid for years and years. But now we're like, okay, like this is a skill. It's a skill and an academic endeavor to build better tissue. So imagine it's like the repositioning is like a coat hanger, and the tip and the coats that you hang off that, we want to make that the base that we can possibly do. So coat hanger and base your skin. Sure, that's how you do good. That's how you feed tissue. So your skills are definitely too.
Absolutely. So the new the injectors who haven't been down this road now have to have a mindset that I have to be a great artist, sculptor, understand all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is what they put 98% of their effort in. But you must, as you say, if you really want to do the right thing for your patients, you must also think you're not going to get the lips pop of Instagram, right? You're not going to get the before and after. Now you got to think, I want to work with this patient, have a relationship, and we're going to be partners. This is a 6, 12, 18-month process. And we're hard because maybe 10 years will be easier, but we have to be patient and get patients to be patient.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I need you, I would like for you to, because for you it's second nature, but a lot of injectors out there don't really understand the fibroblast, what it does, all the things it does. And if we're putting things in the face to stimulate collagen, collagen comes from fibroblasts. But we want more than that, as you say. So for you, it's part of your nature, but I want you to really go through what a fibroblast does, all the things it makes, its arms, what it takes it to be happy, what it takes it to be sad, or what it does when it's different ways where you're after it. So that's a basic building.
That's the basic building block.
Yeah. So talk about that.
So we're talking about those two pillars, and when you want to make better tissue, then you need to think about the cells, right? Most important cell in that whole ecosystem from skin to bone, fibroblasts. Okay, as you say. So fibroblasts, right? When they are young and when they are surrounded by the best physical collagenous elastin complex structure.
Like in a 22-year-old face.
Yeah. It's not just a cell, it is a cell that's attached onto a physical structure behind them. These cells, fibroblasts, they don't exist like another cell does, like rolling around in the blood. They only work well if they are physically attached onto something, and that structure has to feel right to them.
And that's science-based research. We know this. So take that message home, everyone. The fibroblasts need to be supported to be happy.
Exactly.
Period.
And when they're supported, so they have little things on the end, so it's like a spindle-like shape.
You haven't used E-bend. Can you say, go ahead. I know I told you not in Texas, everything's big, but go ahead, say they have
So fibroblasts, like a spindle shape with like 3 hands at the end, they're called integrins.
Okay.
When those integrins attach onto something, when they're happy enough to hold on to something, then it's like a domino effect that happens internally till it gets the DNA, and then that cell will produce everything that fibroblasts normally produce when they're just normally maintaining a good ecosystem.
And what are those things?
So those things is the whole thing, like as in collagen, not just one type of collagen, but collagen type 1, GOS type 3, right? If you'd asked us years ago, we'd be like, collagen type 1, good. Collagen type 3, bad. The reality, the ratio between them makes the right kind of tissue. So right ratios. Next, elastic. When cells are happy, they're not in an emergency state. So fibroblasts can be in 2 states. They can be 1, relaxed, hanging out, supported. Then they make collagen, elastin, and a thing called proteoglycans as well. So that means it's the whole blow soup. So imagine that to make everything as normal, you need to make the complete thing, which means the noodles, if it was a bowl of soup, that's collagen and elastin. but you also need to make the best soup, the kind of broth around it. Fibroblasts make all of that. They make the noodles, beautiful noodles, if they're not in a hurry. They make the best broth, growth factors, hyaluronic acid, proteoglycans, which is kind of like an adapted hyaluronic. It's like the jelly that surrounds cells, that supports them, and all the flavoring that's in the broth, right? Relaxed fibroblasts make everything, all the soup. That is when you are supporting, hugging them, like, so if you hug a fibroblast, make it feel like it's in a normal environment, it will make everything that's usually required for a whole extracellular matrix, right? But it can act in another way. You can poke fibroblasts with a stick.
Like that stimulated or inflammatory.
Yeah. And when there's products which are designed around that, they are designed to trigger another kind of fibroblast response, which is, it's an emergency, right? The fibroblasts are like, okay, don't bother making anything else, particularly to make a lot of collagen and make it fast because we're fligging a bowl. God, relax fibroblasts. Hang on, we can hang out, we can make elastin, because elastin takes ages to make, it's much more difficult, it's an external cell process. If you're in a hurry, you make a lot of collagen, because collagen, super easy to make, super good to plug balls, build gaps.
When you said plug holes, I am so dumb. I now have this, because I've heard you say this before, but what you're saying is, okay, I mean, I've got scars here. That's collagen, right? But that's collagen, that's an emergency.
Yeah.
And it just laid down a bunch of stuff that looks like a scar.
Yep. So exactly. So regeneration is where you can
emergency.
build it back so that it doesn't form scar tissues.
I'll say
Both are producing collagen, right? The reality is, it's not just one thing or the other. It isn't just like, oh, this is perfect regeneration. Perfect regeneration actually happens if you do a tiny little, take a needle, you poke your epithelium, and look at it, gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because those cells are really amazing regeneration. The bigger the hole, the deeper it goes, the harder it is for the body. So sometimes they have to bridge it with not proper normal tissue. They have to bridge it with just stuff that's a filler. Is the body's filler, basically.
So if I'm looking at a beautiful 26-year-old, firmness, great, you just know she's young and beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So what I see now is fibroblasts in there, and they don't need calcium hydroxy particles in there because they're supported by the natural retinaculum. And as I see her mature, the fibroblasts are going, what happened to all the support around me? Like, hey guys, nobody's holding me up.
Yep.
Is that what's going on?
Exactly. That's one major thing. So think about sunlight, right? Why is it so bad? Because it destroys that underlying structure, elastin, collagen. And so you get chunky, fragmented structure underneath. Cells, very simply, don't have anything to hang on to. So when the little linchpins are like that, they're not like that, hanging out, feeling good, right? Producing all the right things. When you take off the integrins to either side, you form a little ball, not folding onto anything. And this is where it's interesting. Because you would think, right, for a body, that those cells detecting the loss of good structure underneath it, that it would be like, let me now make more, because clearly you don't have it. But no, this is called the cascade of aging. The cascade of aging is the exact opposite. This body's like, okay, this body's going down, let's take it down. So what it does is it produces MMPs, metalloproteinases, right? So they're famous. The MMPs come up. They're really good at breaking up.
Yeah,
what those are. No. So it does the opposite. When they are not attached, it actually further breaks down everything. It's a cascade of aging.
Maybe it's part of, from an evolutionary standpoint, trying to get rid of us because we've done our job of reproducing.
Right, okay.
Same way mitochondria, when they get old, they don't just stop producing energy, they start destroying us, right?
That's right. That is aging. It's a tipping point, and then it's a sacramental thing when people accelerate aging, and all longevity or anti-aging treatments is about stepping in, right? Stepping in, and you can step in in two ways. You step in because you surround the cells with the best chemicals, pictures, and or the most optimal environment in terms of the best jelly, and you can actually surround it with the best nutrients. For example, we have lots of different ways we do that. And importantly, you physically support them. So calcium hydroxylapatite, we see from many, many, many studies that the cells physically attach onto the surface of calcium hydroxylapatite. And so that's, you biomechanically support them by doing that. So just, you got two ways which you can help stack in aging processes, physically or chemically.
Okay. The sun's going to go down about 8 hours tonight, but so much to ask you. So let me get a little more direct now. But I do have to say, I tell my patients, look, once you reproduce, evolution doesn't care if you fall off a cliff. Like, you're designed to die. Anyway, that's another story, because I could geek out on science with you all day. Now, newer Injector has never used hybrid Radiesse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different stuff out there from different people who use it. I want to get a message across. Number one, give me your basic advice, but talk. When I heard you talk about dilution and how not to do a 6-to-1 dilution, talk about them. Someone new to this wants to say, hey, maybe I believe this Kate thing. Maybe she's got Katie's, but what should they do? And how should they think about hyper-dilute Radiesse? How they can introduce it, how they can use it, and where to put it. There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, so the first thing to understand is that the movement of Radiesse is a physician-driven grassroots movement. That is, it's like, it did not, of course the companies were like there, Birch was there, but actually, in fact, this growth of the way that we use it now was driven by us physicians noticing it and driving it forward.
Yeah, one thing that I want to make sure that people hear is we are aesthetics, and we talk now about rejuvenation all the time. People have been doing regenerative medicine for years.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing. You got into the research in that. You have this body of research of people who say, what do you mean you guys are putting stuff in the face? We didn't pay attention to that. We know that this stuff works, right?
Yeah.
And
outside of us, outside of our feet,
right.
In regenerative business as a whole, they already have previously realized
Right.
this is used for
So you're helping us leapfrog and take this body of information that already existed, that this stuff does that, and bring it into the face, correct?
Yes, and so we could where the physicians, or all of us, have got practical ways, and also back that up with a whole bunch of new.
Okay, so
yeah.
Now let's.
Yes, and so we get where the physicians, or all of us, have got practical ways, and also back that up with a whole bunch of research.
So
yeah.
Now let's get down and dirty. Injector says, okay.
Yep.
All right, enough of this theory. You guys, I buy into it. Just says, okay.
Yeah.
All right, enough of this theory. You guys, I buy into it. It's Monday, and I'm going to see a patient. Like, what do I do? How do I manipulate it? What dilution should I make? Where should I put it? Give me some basics for that.
So the basic thing is, right, that if you look a patient out and you pitch their cheek, right, remember one is repositioning, the other's making better tissue, right? So imagine that you look and you say, how do I know if they got good tissue or not, right? So here's a really simple way of doing it, right? So you take your cheek and you pull it. And when you pull it out the way, you are testing the underlying retinacula, which is that deep forest of collagenous and elastin structures, which basically holds your skin on to your smas. Yeah, right? I'm pulling it off. The more I can pull it away, very sad, isn't it? Yep, we're trying not to for that. The more I can pull that, the more you can see that underlying forest of structure is weaker. So there's lots of studies to say if this retinacula is not very thick and very sparse, then you have lax.
Just imagine pulling it on a 22-year-old versus a 68-year-old, right?
Exactly.
You get the feel.
So if you want firmer or tighter or more supportive skin, right?
Yeah.
My answer is, do not chuck that full of collagen, right?
Yeah.
Rebuild the retinacula. Radiesse 1-to-1 You inject it with
one to one, so I emphasize that.
yeah. This is comes from a paper that I wrote where it said probably for most people, pretty much all ethnicities, a solution of 1.5 mils of Radiesse diluted with 1.5 of normal saline or normal saline with a little bit of lignicate or
Specifically, not more than that. That's talk about why that's important, that dilution.
Well, it's what's really important is that is enough of a dilution to send it through the retinacula. So it goes down. It's really important that you don't over dilute babies.
Talk about why.
If you take Radiesse, right, and you put it in a solution of say 1 to 6, right? So 6 mils, so you have 1 to 6 dilution. If you leave that on the side and walk away, we'll come back and you look at it, you will find after a very short period of time, you will have clear gel and a white sediment at the bottom. Yeah. The more you dilute it, the quicker it comes out solution. So when we give, a consensus about how much dilution to use for what area, 1 to 1 and 1 to 2, really, or even 1 to 3 is really sufficient for most places.
Say that again. So if that's good. No reason I want you to say it again is because I see people that are worried about nodules in this. So try to be safe, but give us the whole thing about how far apart those little bowling balls can be before the macrophages don't even feel them. Like.
So what happens is 1 to 1. If you look at our research and you say the amount of regeneration that Radiesse will stimulate, kind of peaks at 1 to 1. 1 to 1 is the optimal. Why not the gel? Why not in the original form? Well, because the gel is kind of thick. That actually pushes it slightly towards inflammation. Not much, but a little bit. And also the spheres are a little bit too close together. Right? Too close. A wee bit too close together to be optimal. When you add 0.5 acidity, you mix it around, and that solution now gives more space so the fibroblasts are able to come along and attach onto the spheres of Radiesse. And in addition, what it does is that when it's a gel, it would sit, you'd inject it underneath the skin, it would stay in a little slug.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all yeah, because the gel is folding it up. Right. Now, but we're like, but what is our job? Is our job to make shapes or make better tissue? Make better tissue with this solution. To make better tissue, you want to send it down like you were sending those little spheres right down the river of the retinacula. Gabriella Casabona shows this super clearly, right? Those spheres run down the rivers, doesn't go into the fat, goes round the rivers and reinforces the whole forest, which is holding up your skin. So it's like, what's important is if you're doing different procedures, right? You're like, what is it doing and where is it doing it? Radiesse is reinforcing retinacula. We've seen it in our biopsy studies. We've seen it in the studies which Gabriella took chunks of tissues and looked to see how it runs.
Literally from tissue.
Yeah, literally down. And you see it running down the retinacula. Why is that important in today's aesthetics?
Because the retinacula is what you talk about when you pull out the cheek.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's not about stiff, it's not about stone faces, it's not about stiffness. It's about rebuilding just the right amount of tension. Because think about what happens in that zone, right? You got the skin and you got the SMAS. And in between that is a super, super important zone, which people used to describe as just superficial fat. Well, no. In our papers, we describe it as superficial adipose retinacular zone. Right? It's a complex structure where you have the fat suspended by this network of fibers. And that is like a whole, it's an ecosystem, right?
And on a practical basis, so an injector would use the cannula more superficially above the SMAS in that zone.
Yeah.
Correct?
Exactly. And then it runs down.
Right.
If you go some step with the SMAS. Exactly. So if you use 1-to-1 dilution, right, which is plenty, subdermal with a cannula, you are sending those spheres all the way down and it stops at the SMAS.
And just to go back to the dilution, if you dilute it more thinking you're safer, yeah, you might be safer, but now the fibroblasts are going, I can't feel anything, they're too far apart. Is that correct?
Yes, over dilution, way over dilution, but people are like, oh, I want to be safe, as you said.
Right.
So therefore I'm going to like really dilute it. One, you decrease the efficacy if you over dilute. Two, you run the risk of it coming out of solution.
Right.
So people do it on the neck, right? They're like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to do 1 to 6 on the neck.
Yeah, on the neck.
And what they do is they do a big slug of product, right? Like, and basically form a kind of syringe. Like, imagine that. You're leaving a kind of like tube of product along the neck. And that product in there acts as if you just sat the syringe down on the table, and then you can sometimes get a wee line. So over dilution is not your friend.
Yeah, it's paradoxical, but it can actually be less safe.
Yeah.
Or less.
So here's the bottom or the top line.
Yeah.
Is this, that hyper-dilute Radiesse is a retinacular reinforcement or regeneration technique, right? We have backed by science, biopsies, many studies, and our new study shows exactly that, right? So, and why is that important? Because it creates firmness.
Yeah.
And in Kay's new study, it shows that it actually produces tightness, and to some extent it remodels and creates volume. And she's doing 1 to 3. So she's done a study which she does it across the tissues, and what does she find? 1 to 3. So there's no volume in that, right? But she sees better positioning of tissues, right? Why? Because it's a retinacular treatment. And if you think that this is really important, good retinacular means happy fat, right? There's a thing called fat fitness, right? Now, there's some jumps, academic jumps there. But if you think, why do we have attenuation of fat pads, like particularly in the D structures? All right, that's how someone is 25, right? You see they look 25. You see them under 35, they have no wrinkles. They look great, but everything is just slidden down. Where is that coming from? This is the deep structures.
And talk about the depth when you have a patient in your chair who's in their early 30s and wants to be proactive versus more mature. Where will you put that and why?
Yeah.
So where do they inject it and why?
So a good colleague of mine, Daria Bioregeneration, she, in a publication that we're doing for Regeneration, she came on that publication, that in that supplement. She was like, hey, actually, what I do is I've noticed that when I inject on my younger patients, subsmans or intermediate fat pads, below the SMAFR or in the deep fat pads, for my younger patients, 1-to-1, not for volume, but 1-to-1, that she gets overall tightness. We're doing the other paper, she's heading up the other paper now and showing that. And it's actually a really good insight because for those people, that deep fat structures, the way it's held, the deep structures are more, is like larger opponents, right? So the retinacula, when it's in the deep structures, bigger fat lobes and less fibrous structures through it until you get to the outside of the fat pads and they're a bit stronger, right? So it's different structure, superficial to deep. So you get early aging in that deep structure where the fat, remember, fat goes, attenuation, it disappears when it doesn't feel the right thing, GLP-1s, right? This is not a system where fat lives on its own. Fat lives in close relationship with the structure around it. So this is my big light bulb moment over the last few years with all of our research. It's like you can communicate. You could talk to cells, that you could surround them with the best exosomes that you can indent, right? If you were allowed to put them into the skin, that is one way to improve cell function. But almost, and there's a good paper in Nature about this, almost 50% of regeneration, if you want to give it a figure, is what they steal. Biomechanical impact. So we have 2 hands of regeneration. One is make them feel good physically, and the other one is surround them with the best communication.
I love that. And you talk about the fat fitness. I mean, the studies have shown if you look at internal organ fat, that's inflammatory fat versus the external. And so this fat fitness is a whole other field. It's a lot of studies showing that. Talk to me about, I'm doing it since seeing you, but injectors who are interested, because over in the UK and Europe, they blend all kinds of stuff. I'm a blender. So blending someone who's in their late 30s, they've lost volume, but they also want to be proactive, taking hyaluronic acid and blending it with Radiesse. Tell me your take on that. What are your thoughts?
So there's a lot of studies now that, again, really good example of how we group the fear forward.
Yeah.
So Nabil and Johnston produced it, like, let's do some studies where we take hyaluronic acid and we blend it with calcium hydroxylapatite. Let's do some safety studies on that. And now let's do some efficacy studies on that. So we have both, we have efficacy and safety. And now they're at like, I don't know, they're the last count was like 5,000 patients. Like big. So we know it's safe and we know it's efficacious. But here's the thing for everyone. As soon as you start blending or mixing your product, you really need to have, we talked about this, didn't we, in the box phase we do, where it's like, you just need to understand what you're changing, right? If you're now like your own chef, right? And you're now responsible for that product. So imagine you put calcium hydroxylapatite and you mix it with quite a firm, like Bioregeneration, for example, but quite a firm hyaluronic acid, right? You mix those two things together. What you have to do is, what did I now make? Because if it's a sticky gel, that will hold up underneath the skin, right? So that's more towards depositioning. The more watery the substance is, physically they can see what you made, the more that will send it down through the tissues. Gels do repositioning. Gels hold up inside the tissue. Water, as you add more and more water, because you can use calcium hydroxylapatite Radiesse plus hyaluronic acid plus saline, right? The more saline you add to that, the more it will disperse it throughout the tissues. And that has different implications because people need to decide, what am I doing? Am I making a shape? Or am I building better tissue? You sort of need to understand and pick a lane, because otherwise you're like, I'm doing this, I'm fixing this, and now I've got lots of product. That seems like a good thing. Have lots of product, but they don't know what to promise for their patient.
So how do you clinically first of all, do you do it? And let's just take a general patient in the 30s, 40s, 50s. How do you decide, am I going to blend this? And if so, what do I blend? Generalization.
Do I do it? Yes. The things extremely is useful. Okay. As a generalization, when I am using a blend, see, this one will just talk about calcium hydroxylapatite plus hyaluronic acids, right?
With calcium hydroxide in its native form, or?
So let's just talk about, because there's lots of different ways to blend lots of things, right? But if I just take that combination there, so there's Radiesse, that's a specific product. Okay, so 70-30 gel, Radiesse plus hyaluronic acid, right? If I add no water, no saline to that, then I will inject it nano technique on the bowl.
In little tiny dots. I saw you do that.
Little dots. Whole systems for that, right? Right. If I want to inject to make shapes, right, but with a bit of regeneration, but I'm really making a shape, then I would have used the same group, but I would add some saline in it. Like
to the Radiesse first, or how I do it.
Yeah, it can either be the Radiesse or the hyaluronic acid. So you would do 0.5 of Radiesse, you would do a 1 ml of hyaluronic acid.
Right, one day.
But this time, if you're putting it underneath the skin, still for shaping, I would add 0.5 of saline to that. So that means in total, it just makes it easier to blend, but it's not enough aqueous solution to really send it down through the tissues. Do you know what I mean? It's not, if I add lots of saline, what will happen is it will just take that product and it will send it right through you lose the shaping.
What if I like it in the deep fat pads. What would you do? Let's say you take a hydrofiber and you want to regenerate their cheeks, but also want to shake their cheeks, give them a little lift, but you also want to do regeneration. What would you do then? How much blending?
Again, something like 0.5 to a mil max, because otherwise you start to lose your shaping. You just and think about when you add water, it's a distributor. It's not an active substance, and it doesn't leave anything behind, but it distributes you. So we have our own systems where we have tissue expansion, where you send hyaluronic acids throughout the tissues with a little bit of Radiesse to just create really connected shapes, for example, in the tissue. So what you need to do is, and again, we were talking, and we've already spent 2 days together afterwards. What people need to do is to take the time to get those, understand for themselves how to be the chef, how to know that what their aim is and how to lend or change or whatever they're good at to create that in that patient. It's a skill.
So the first step for injectors just getting into this, I would think, would be don't worry about blending with the filler. At this point, just go with the Radiesse. Think about that. Understand what you're doing. And just to summarize, we didn't get finished talking that, but in a younger patient, you're going to go sub-SNAS. And in a more mature patient, maybe both above the SNAS and below the SNAS with hyper-dilute Radiesse. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I would say it even simpler than that.
Okay, make it simple.
Even simpler. If you're looking at someone and you would like to improve their skin quality, right? That's usually means they're a little bit older.
Yeah, more mature. Let's say more mature. Wise.
Yeah, exactly. So you just start with one thing. Like we do a thing called the butterfly technique. And that butterfly technique is you just do 1-to-1, forget about everything else. Just do 1-to-1 dilution.
1-to-1 dilution. Simple.
Make sure you do that wash across the whole of the mid.
You don't need a wash. You mean injecting.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Make sure and again, do need to actually see this and have some view out here. But but imagine that you're going to do multiple linear threads, but that is going to be across the mid-face, a little bit sublabial, across the mid-face.
Like the butterfly with weights.
Exactly. Here's the top wing.
Yeah.
Here's the bottom wing.
Yeah.
And you put a little bit of less dilute just below the jawline.
Yeah.
And you make sure that you do over 2 sessions, you do 2 syringes of Radiesse. So the first session, you do 1 syringe, you dilute it 1-to-1, home falls. Second time, you do the same thing, and then you do it same 1 syringe but diluted 1-to-1, both sides, and that means that you've achieved the correct dose. Right? It's really important that you have enough in there at 16 weeks apart, about 16 weeks apart, and then you look at the results in 6 months. It's not 3 months, but it's 6 months, right? Because you need to have the whole little bit more like. So the reason why that's a good thing to start is number 1 is the regulation 1-to-1. Number 2, the butterfly technique. Make sure that you put it wide enough. So people, when you start with Radiesse and subdermal, forget everything else in the beginning. Subdermal, just do subdermal. So the reason why that's a good thing to start is number 1 is the regulation 1-to-1. Number 2, the butterfly technique. Make sure that you put it wide enough. So people, when I start with Radiesse, subdermal, just do subdermal. Forget everything else in the beginning. Subdermal, just do subdermal. And the most important thing is you put it where there's already hillets. So people have got sculpting in their heads so hardwired in their head.
Where there's already hills.
Yeah, so yeah, stuff like, because our eye is trained to be like, here are hills and valleys, and you transition them, etc., etc. So people, when they're doing hyper-dilute, they're like, I can't put it here because there's already a hill. The only hill not to inject, you don't inject the jaws, right? Because sometimes it can remain there. So that's why the wing of the butterfly has to be kind of wide, like this, and a little bit extra to improve the skin quality here. Okay. The little bit of a wee bit, keeping a little bit of less dilute along the jawline, because this is aesthetics.
Yeah.
They'll be like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Even before the whole result, happens, they already see straighter jawline. And you lift it underneath here because this cervical mental angle, like the way it starts to break, you the first thing aging and to boost your collagen and elastin and the whole ecosystem is really booey. That's why I start with that. Start with simple butterfly technique. Sure, a day you can build from there. Because that does for lots and lots of people. It does, to boost and remodel and kickstarts your elastin. Because remember I said this? When you pull it away, that's collagen. When you leave it go, that's elastic.
Yeah.
How fast it flips back is elastin. You need both tighter, but you need elasticity as well.
So basically, we all talk, a lot of people talk, I want to get into regeneration, all this stuff. So I think one of the messages, well, you always have to be responsible and understand the literature, but you have to be patient. This is not an overnight game. You mentioned 6 months. So I think the injectors there had the mindset of, goes before and after wow pictures. But if we're going to do the best for our patients, you have to put back an understanding of.
She has 2 skills, right? The first skill of repositioning, you do it straight away. 2 weeks later, you see it. If you want to remodel new skin, we have tons of detail on this.
Yeah.
You need the first 3 months, you basically just create all the ingredients. The second 3 months is when the body breaks them down and remodels them into structures, right? That's a 6-month process. So sure, like I hear criticism, people saying, if you have to see the results in 6 months is not real shit. Yeah. I get it. I understand it. But this, where you're properly biostimulating all of our data, like our biopsy data, where we see exactly what's produced at all the time points, it shows this. First 3 months, ingredients. Second 3 months, remodeling into new structure and function. And we know where it's doing it as well, right in that kit.
So look, I truly appreciate, number one, your time today. And number two, your passion, because you actually had to tell the company, look, you have something good on your hands, and you've gone around the world, you speak, and you are bringing this message that is very timely right now. But if you're more popular, they take a bit more popular in other parts of the world than the U.S., but it may seem like an overnight success that took 20 years, right? Like you've been slugging at this, long time. Funding some of
lots of 100%. We funded our own research
But-
at Exosome.
But guys, this is publication. This is peer-reviewed, published literature, skin biopsies, safety data, efficacy. I mean, this isn't just shooting from the hip. No, this is real science, and I would not advocate anyone to do it or not do it. What they need to do is spend your energy and effort to look at all that you've published, all the body of work, and see if it makes sense for them. Because if you want to help your patients, you got to be knowledgeable about this.
100%. And I also would encourage people saying, oh, there's not enough data.
Plenty of data.
But also, I'm like, build it.
Yeah.
Do it. It's actually not that hard to publish.
Where can people find you so they can experience you? Give us all the places they can reach Keiko.
So we have our training in the UK, which is the K Gold experience.
Which I went to, and first of all, just being in that countryside of the English countryside is worth going. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But we built it so that we would be in an environment which felt like a retreat, where we could genuinely examine all the evidence, whether it's from Radiesse or whether it's from biochemical cues, from exosomes to polynucleotides. We had a space and time to just really educate. Because I think the thing is, at the moment, I watch people they hear an opinion on Instagram now, and they're basing their practice on a person's opinion. This is a soundbite, it's not education. These two things are very separate. You need to be educated, and education takes time. I love the debates. I love the throwing it out here. But that is different from education. You need to sit down and take the time and be educated so that you can be your own boss with this.
And
you're not prone to people just telling you things.
Let me tell you, it's a small, very small group. It's spending 2 days of debating and watching and clinical hands-on, but it's an amazing experience. I just have to say, because it's such a small group. You know, conferences have their place, but it's a time to think, not always agree with you, and go back and forth, which I love. 100%. Yeah. See, that's one way. Where else can they find you on social media or other things that you do?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Yeah, you're starting to get better at your game, but Kate, you gotta up your game on that.
I am on Instagram, yeah. So Kate Goldie, and then the Kate Goldie Experience, and also we have our comic, which is called the Injectors.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I truly thank you not only for your time today, but for your passion to further help all of us help our patients. I love it.
It's what it will do. It will help our patients in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and create a world where everyone wakes up confident in their answer.